So, welcome to another episode of the Happiness Hive podcast. And today's guest is Laetitia Andrac, who is an energetics and strategy business mentor. She's the founder of Essential Shift Consulting and a #1 best-selling author of her book, which is called Light It: How to Trust Your Intuition and Build a Thriving Business. Laetitia is a business doula who teaches impact-driven entrepreneurs how to weave intuition and strategy together to grow sustainable businesses for people, profit, and the planet. And we're going to chat about all the things that make Laetitia who she is, and also dipping into that authenticity piece about showing up authentically in business, but in life. So welcome. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me, Catherine. I'm really good.
Oh, I just love your vibe. You know, we haven't really, we've connected online,
Yes.
but you just radiate this beautiful, warm, electric energy. Have you always been like that?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. This kind of, are you plugged on the wall? Like, how do you get so energized all the time? Yes, it's part of my strengths and my weaknesses as well. But
Yeah, do you know what? Same. And so as a kid, you were like that as well?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, tell me, I'm just going to even ask you, what are the strengths of radiating that positivity? So you said it's part of the strengths, but it's also part of your weaknesses.
Yes.
What are the positive bits around it?
You're really magnetic.
Yes.
People want to be with you because you're always positive. You have this positive outlook. You have this energy that, they can plug into, and then they feel very energized. And it's very, how when we yawn, everyone is yawning. And when you're just very radiant, vibrant, and energetic, everyone feels energized. So you're uplifting everyone moves, sorry.
Yes.
But the negativity of that, or the shadow, because I always like to say there is light and shadow to everything, and it's just about knowing it and acknowledging it. The shadow is sometimes you're giving everything away.
Yeah.
Your radiance is just illuminating everyone but yourself, and you just then feel burnt out, which is my story, which I share in my book, and you're just giving everyone this beautiful light, and then inside like, oh my gosh, what's left to me?
Yeah, I can really relate to that too, that it's about that natural energy, that natural energy, but it can also leak out.
Exactly. If you're not mindful.
But yes, but not fulfilling, not coming back. It can be external, but not internal. So, that's interesting. Yeah, very, very cool. Now, before we got on air, you said you had a little piece of cheese. Being French, you needed to have a little nibble of cheese. Tell me, where did you grow up? Where are you? Where's your country of origin? And tell me all about that.
Yes, so I'm born and raised in a very small town in the south of France, a very, very small village. And so the French Riviera, beautiful place on earth, coming from there, from my ancestors and sisters and all of that. So very grounded in the south of France, and loving the cheese, loving the cheese, the croissant, and the delicious French food. And yes, so I am born and raised in the south of France. And then for my study, I moved to Lyon, where I studied in one of the best business schools in the world. And then I moved to Paris to work for a bit. And after 7 years in the buzzing, energetic city of Paris, I felt very drained, and I was looking to reconnect with nature, and Australia called me. So this is home since 2014, about 9 years now.
Oh, wow. And did you come here on your own?
I came with my husband.
Yes.
So we got married just before moving to Australia. The funny story is when he proposed, we didn't know we would move to Australia. He proposed, we organized our wedding. On the rings that he proposed with, it's an antique ring with Australian sapphire on it. And we got married under a eucalyptus tree. When we don't have many eucalyptus tree in Provence, we got married in a vineyard from friends of us and under eucalyptus tree. So I guess Australia knew we were coming, but we didn't know yet.
You didn't know, I would say. Isn't it beautiful how just things map out in our
Yeah.
lives
Yeah.
and just the significance of that, and then to get called to come to Australia. So you live in Sydney, in Cronulla, is that
we live
correct?
in Cronulla, yes. So when we initially moved to Australia for 7 years, we lived in Bondi Beach,
Yeah.
which was buzzing, amazing, loved it. And then COVID hit and we had 2 little kids at home, both of us working as general manager in big firm. And we're like, okay, are we going to kill each other or do we need a house with a garden? And that's where we moved to Cronulla.
And so for those listeners who are not from Australia, or some of them even from Australia, Cronulla is a beach suburb in Sydney. So you're still
it's a beach suburb south of Sydney.
Yes.
Close to the coast. So same as Bondi, but not eastern suburb of Sydney.
Yes.
More southern, close to the Royal National Park, Bundeena.
Yeah.
So we wanted more of the nature that was calling us initially in Australia. And Bondi was beautiful, but we only had the ocean. The rest of the trees and so on were not very existent. So here we have the Royal National Park on our doorstep. And we loved it here. Beautiful.
So it sounds like nature's a really important part, like really important for you, that access and being in nature.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm neurodiverse and nature soothes me and helps me and rejuvenates me. And my daughter are neurodiverse as well. So it's really important to be in nature. And I grew up in a very small village surrounded by nature. My husband as well is from the south of France. So for us, it was very important to find a place where we can commute easily to a city center for our respective work, but at the same time be in nature in 5 minutes.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds just beautiful. Like that sounds like a really lovely balance to have the nature, but access to what you need. What was growing up like for you? What was it like? So you sort of said about being in that small town in the south of France. What was it like growing up there?
It was really, when we say, everyone in the village and, all the story about the village and all that, it was really that, which I really enjoyed. And, it was very safe. So I could go and walk to buy our bread in the bakery. It was, we would go and play in the big space that we have with all the other kids from the small village. It was really like taking a bike and going here and there. And
lovely.
It was a very nice, happy and humble childhood. So my parents didn't have much, but we were always having food on the table and always the simple pleasure. So our simple holiday, the thing we would do were always going hiking in nature, the bushwalks and with our backpack and exploring nature. So I never went on a holiday abroad until I was very old. And I took my first flight when I was 21. I had a panic attack. It was to go to India. Another story for another day.
Oh my gosh.
It's just I was, France, my parents were always like, France is the most beautiful country in the world. We have everything. We have the snow, we have nature, we have this and that. And they were really fascinated by hiking. And so they passed this on to me and my brother. So it was a very simple, humble, nice childhood, like nothing traumatic, just very peaceful, just
sounds
simple,
beautiful.
Simple life.
Yeah. Ours was similar growing up as well. We had, we were always looked after, but it was very family oriented and just had a beautiful childhood.
Yes.
Yeah, it was lovely. And what did you do? So you studied from school. What were you studying?
Yes, so I went into the normal schooling system and I was quickly identified as a kid who has, kind of great capacity to learn new things and so on. So I was pushed onto a program which we have in France, which is what we call preparatory school. So it's like a very elitist program where you're prepared for entering our best business school and so on and so forth. And at the time, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be an anthropologist. I wanted to study ancient culture. I wanted to be a lawyer. I really wanted to work in that field of human rights, knowing people, knowing their culture and so on. And basically my teachers, they all get together and they applied for me to get into this very elitist program, which I got in. And then I was catapulted into another kind of world where all those kids were kids of diplomats, kid of, leader of big corporation and all of that. And I just had this, for the first time in my life, this kind of sense of, oh my gosh, I think you say in English, a bumpkin ass or whatever it's called. We say a cutere in French, but we have like the bumpkin something.
What is it, a bumpkin?
I don't
country bumpkin.
Country bumpkin.
Country bumpkin.
So I felt like a country bumpkin. I was like, oh my gosh, what is these people like? The Louis Vuitton bag and the, very nice designer clothes and the very nice car and so on. And I was 18 at the time, and I just was in this, we will all have different room and so on. And of course, my parents couldn't afford like a big apartment and so on. So I was staying in the campus in this small room and so on. And, all of them driving their fancy car and so on. So it was very interesting.
Do you know what we call that too? Like a fish out of water.
Completely.
That fish out of water in an environment that's very, very different.
Very different.
And also, what impact, how did that affect you being in that?
I think it affected me deeply for, the rest of my career for quite some time until I burnt out, which is something I share in my book. But if I take you on the journey,
please.
It's like I arrived in that space where, it was completely foreign to me. Everything, I had never been to the museum. I had never been to the theater. It was just, to the opera. It was just a whole new way of being, living. And so I was aspiring to belong to this group, as you would when you're 18 and you're just entering this new group. So I was striving to belong. So I just learned their codes and learn about their way of being and so on and so forth, which, I'm a very chameleon being at heart. So, I just adopted their way of being and so on, which then encouraged me to strive to be a strategy consultant and then, earning a lot of money and having a great career in Paris for a few years until I was like, this is not who I am. I'm just playing games here. I'm not this person. I want to be in nature. I don't want to be in the museum, in the opera, even though I loved actually going to the opera. And I still do. Like I go to the opera in Sydney as often as I can. So this is really something I love. But at the time I was more like, this is a code, right? So I want to belong to this culture, this new social status that I have acquired. And it was really kind of feeling shameful of my family and my upbringing, which is something I share in my book. And I know it affected my grandparents, were farmer and all that. But I said that I was sorry, but just I thought that this was success. This was like this external wealth signaling was success. So I became that person until everything collapsed. I was like, no. I'm
going to go back. We'll talk about the collapse in a minute, but it's interesting, isn't it, Laetitia, that you were kind of taken out of your environment, even though you wanted to do something different. And I know the French schooling system is different to here, but you were almost taken out of that environment and plopped into a very foreign culture and foreign environment, and then working out the code and to fit in. It's about operating a certain way.
Yes.
And, doing that because there's that fear of rejection and not being good enough and I have to be like them. And it's very, very easy to be swept up in that.
Yes.
And then, getting some of the benefits. But then what I'm hearing is that it just didn't feel like there was a disconnect for you. And as you got older, tell us what was happening then about that sort of process you were going through, this is not who I am.
So I had moments where I think I was reconnecting with who I was. It's really when I reached 24 where I was really having a few years where I was just fully into the kind of leadership thing, all of that. But at the beginning it was interesting because when I was in this environment, so for the school term, I would be living like them, like a air attendant when you're like in this 5-star hotel and then you go back to your home and it's actually, not that luxurious.
Yes.
So I would be, living this lifestyle for the time of the term and then going back to my roots, going back to who I was, going back to my family were so connected to the cycle of nature, to the land, trusting your intuition, and practicing very beautiful rituals of healing and all of that. And then going back. So I had still this connection with, who I am in part of myself and who I was becoming, or who I was trying to become. And so I went to India during that time. I explored, my own spiritual path and all of those kind of things. So I was still a bit connected in who I was as a young child and as my soul is now. And then it's when I moved to Paris and I started this high demanding exposure career. And I was groomed to go into this best business schools, and I was groomed to go into becoming a partner in one of the big strategy firm. And then, so during that time when I was groomed in the strategy consulting world, because of my brain, because of how I think, how I see things and so on, I was just like working and disconnecting, no time to go and see the family down south, no time to do those kind of things, and just time to keep going and going up the ladder and delivering those results and traveling and meeting Mike Bloomberg, all those kind of, wow, that's amazing. Yeah. It was amazing. Don't get me wrong. I was disconnecting until one day it all went down to earth back again in 2014. So for a few years, I was just trickling along, going up the ladder, going into this successful path that external people would be like, oh my gosh, you're earning so much money and you own your apartment by yourself in Paris and you're driving this and you have this handbag.
Yeah.
No, that's not.
It's almost like that you've been swept up onto this spinning wheel and that there was good bits of
definitely bits that I'm so grateful for
on the spinning wheel. And I see a lot of people, and I've been on my own spinning wheel, and it's almost hard to get off, like it's just so caught up on it. So what happened for you when you said you just dropped back to earth? What was the
for me, I think I was like, I would describe it as a wave, taken by a wave, and then the wave stopped. It's amazing when you surf, but then at some point the wave dies. And I think this is what happened. I was surfing by wave. I was like, what? And then the wave died. So when I was at the top of the wave, doing this Bloomberg philanthropy work with meeting Mike Bloomberg in Berlin and doing this work, which was like
amazing,
incredible. Loved it. Such impact driven, such purposeful work. Incredible. And then a few days later, I was in my bed, not able to move.
Yeah.
That was in June 2014. And I was just like, cannot move. And for, as you described, a very radiant being plugged on the wall, always with high energy, I was like, what's happening? I cannot move. So I took myself to the doctor, and this is where I was diagnosed with burnout and so on. And this is when I actually took time off for the first time since I was 14, because I started working at 14. If you go back to humble beginning, I wanted to buy myself a motorcycle. My parents couldn't afford it, so I had to work and be a waitress for that. So it's just, I had never taken any holiday. And so at that time, I was always working during the school holiday or in parallel to my study in business school. I was the only one working in parallel and all of that. So I had to take time off work. How lazy, hey? And so I took time off work and I rebuilt myself and I reconnected with my wholeness, with who I was, where I come from, what are my roots, which is what I help all of my clients now do.
Yes, that's what you do now. And how old were you then? So
I was 30, it was my Saturn return. Because I'm an astrologer as well, so I knew it would come.
Yeah.
I knew it would come. I didn't know it would come that hard, but I knew it would.
Because that is, for some listeners might not be familiar with the Saturn return, that's often...
It's when Saturn return in your chart, and it's about 29, 30 years. So you have one when you're 29 or 30, one when you approach your 60, one when you approach your 90. It's just, those cycle of Saturn, which is just readjusting your path, realigning it with your soul purpose and your dharma. And everything I was doing during those 29 years were just the beautiful things that I've learned that I can now use in those years that I'm stepping into my dharma. And then, it would look different in a few years. And We say that often we approach death on our third Saturn return, which is normal. It's around the 90-year-old. So
yes. Yeah. I'm going through my second, now I'm 57, and
yes,
I can see changes happening
definitely.
within, and
Realignment again.
realignment, absolute realignment, that readjustment, realignment.
And that's why I always say, don't fear your Saturn return. A lot of my clients are like, oh my gosh, you're going to tell me when is my Saturn return? I'm like, but don't fear it. Actually, your Saturn return is just an opportunity to be helped by the energy to realign. And if you're already conscious, aware, and so on, the alignment can be very subtle.
Yes. Yeah. So you did big shift then about rebuilding yourself.
Yes.
And you rebuilt yourself so you're still a business strategist, aren't you?
Yes.
What was the sort of process? Tell me what.
Strategy consultant working for big firm in strategy consulting, one of the big strategy firm out there. If you look on LinkedIn, you will know which one it is.
Yes.
And then from there, what I decided is I took the time off, and I took 2 weeks off, and then I extended 2 more weeks. And then when I went back in the office, I tried to, without saying I suffered from burnout, because I was so shameful about it. I just said I had a health issue at the time. If it was now, I would say it, but at the time it was not that, we didn't have COVID, and burnout was not such a buzzword. So it was just very shameful to burn out. So I just came back, said I had a health issue and I wanted to do less. And you know what we always say, it's like either you can change your rituals. If your rituals don't suffice, you need to change your environment. And I try to change by voicing what I needed, by saying no, when before I would always say yes, all those kind of things. It didn't suffice. And then this is when Australia called us. And I told my husband, I was like, let's move to Australia. We didn't know anyone. It was a pure intuitive move. And so we moved here, and he kept working in strategy consulting. And I took 6 months off to really rebuild myself. And then I joined a big firm here in Australia, where I was leading as a general manager, as a strategy, new growth, innovation, still not backing myself enough to be a business owner. I knew I wanted to do that, but I was not backing myself enough. So it's only in 2021, in March 2021, that I quit to launch my business full time.
Oh, wow. So it's been quite a journey, hasn't it? It's
completely. It was not overnight. That's what I always say. Don't believe in overnight stories, because they're never overnight.
No. And it's also about, it's lovely listening to the story and the journey, and just seeing those threads that are woven through it as to how you've got to where you are now, and even I predict where you'll end up going as well. So business strategy is certainly in your DNA, but you do it quite differently now, don't you? So it's your business, and it's about that tapping into your intuition, to be able to use that in your business. So tell us a little bit about what you do there with people. How does that?
So one of my strengths, which has always been my strength, is I'm a visionary, and I love to play with ambiguity. I love to look, for the big innovation, the big trend. How can you create new growth in your business? And this is why, I was hired by those big firms and paid a shit ton of money to pick my brain and design those strategies in the long term, and using all of those different frameworks along the way. And I loved it. I freaking loved it. But it was not always used for good. It was not always about making profit for businesses which are impacting positively people and planet. And when I became a mother, and you may have heard about matrescence, which is a phase where we shift in our life when we become mother. And for me, it was another moment of realignment on top of my Saturn return. Then a few years later, boom, motherhood arrived. And I was like, oh my gosh, not only I was not honoring my full self, now I'm honoring my full self, and I'm coming up in meetings when I was in the big corporation talking about the moon and astrology and the cycle of the season and so on. So I was more mindful about that. So I was bringing all of this together. But when I became a mother, I was like, I need to bring all of this together, but for the greater good. For businesses that are looking to impact positively the planet or positively the people, or both. So this is the way I help as a business strategist and a spiritual mentor, intuitive mentor. So basically I weave the both together, and I call myself being a business doula. So I hold this sacred space for a business owner, for a team, to birth their next growth in their business in pure alignment with their own vision, their own dharma, their own mission. And if we need to go at their natal chart and look at the astrology for that, or their Ayurveda blueprint, because I'm an Ayurveda practitioner as well, or looking at their human design, whatever we need to look to make sure that whatever they're creating is really aligned with their own self and trusting their intuition to create that vision. And then from that, so we start from them to design the strategy, rather than start the strategy, which we would do when I was a strategy consultant, from the external condition. Okay, what's the opportunity in the market? Where are the gaps? How can we close the gaps? What are the next innovation? We do it the other way around.
Yeah.
So I use all the tools, all the knowledge that I'm so grateful that I've gathered for 2 decades doing strategy for big firm and big corporation and all of that, but now use it for the other way around. We start with the individual and we create it from there.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. I've got a million things buzzing around in my head as you say that. And that's often where I see that people lose themselves. You know how you were saying that you were plucked out and you were kind of planted into the elite business school, which was great for you, but it was not really coming from your core. Yeah. A lot of people that I work with often don't know who they are at their core, and then how do they create something, whether it's a business or I kind of focus on that whole of life. How do they create a life that's in alignment with who they are and what they want? And it's that real foundational piece. Mm-hmm. So I love what you do there to be able to get that whole alignment. And I love also, Laetitia, what you were saying, that it's for people. It's also for profit. You know, we're making money out of this as well, but it's also for the planet. It's for the greater good and that ripple effect of all of those things. So for me, that's a really powerful triad, and there's other elements that come off that as well. Just a really powerful, beautiful combination. Thank you. One of the things I wanted to ask you, because when you help to weave intuition and strategy together, strategy is the doing. How do you define strategy? What is strategy?
So it's a very good question. For me, strategy is the where are you going?
Yeah.
So it is the vision, it is the pathway, it is how do you, like, where do you want to go and how do you go there? Yeah. Then the doing is more the tactics and the operation or the implementation of a strategy.
Yes.
Okay, so the strategy is really where we're going. For the implementation, what happens for some of my clients, we're like, okay, so we want to go there. So we want to develop a fully new, so I help startups that are software-based businesses, or I help service-based businesses or product-based businesses. I'm very agnostic because actually my background, I've worked with all of those businesses. So it doesn't really matter what you're doing. It's more like, how do we get there?
Yeah.
So basically, once we worked on the vision, on the strategy, where do you want to be in 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 years? And then we started mapping out the plan for the implementation, the operations, the doing. We may decide to hire someone to do that, or we may decide to outsource this, or we may decide to automate this, but I am not the one helping you do that. Then I refer someone else that may be, a virtual CFO if you're a small business, or a CFO if you're a bigger business, or we may be like, okay, you may need a virtual COO, an operation person to really do all of that, or maybe you need a programming team, a back-end team, a data scientist team, like whatever you need. Then we identify who is going to do the work. But or if you're a solopreneur, we'll identify what is the best way for you to make that happen, but you're doing it. I am more designing as a strategy consultant. We would design the strategy and then we would bring implementation team or more change management consultant or other type of people to do the work. So I'm really helping the business owner to step outside of the business, look where they're going, and designing the strategy. So that's what I define as a strategy. It's basically, think about a river. It's a riverbank.
Yeah.
The riverbank of the river. And then the flow of the river is basically the water and all the doing and all the thing.
All the doing. So what's intuition then?
So intuition is making sure that this is yours.
Yes.
Is this yours or is this someone else? So we basically always check in when we're designing the strategy, when we're designing the new growth opportunity, when we're making decision for the business to pivot, to grow, to hire, to, increase the cash flow here or decrease the profit here, and because actually want to invest here and all those kind of things, we check in.
Yeah.
So it's like helping them first identify what is intuition for them, how is that expressed, because everyone is saying it's gut feeling, it's heart expansion, it's because it's all of that. It's different for each and every one of us. So I help them design, define, identify how is their inner compass being expressed. So I help them do that. We also look at their blueprint and all of that to know, informed by the positioning of their planet, how might they feel their intuition. Then we train that intuition as a new compass rather than what is everyone else doing? What should I do? And then once we use that, we overlay the two. And so intuition is this inner knowing.
Yeah.
No one can tell you should. It's what you know.
Yes.
And actually, my book is called Lighted, but we had hesitated between it or Light It, but I can explain why we landed on Lighted. But it's really this sense of feeling where, like, we were called to go to Australia. Everyone was like, but you've never been. It's 24 hours away. Why would you? Well, I'm like, we're going.
Yeah.
When we bought this house, what the fuck? Like, you live in Bondi. Why don't you buy around here? Why do you? No, Cronulla is calling me. And then, the Montessori school had space for my daughter. By then, we knew they needed an alternative school where in Bondi they wouldn't have had space. All those kind of things align then, but don't question it. And I'm not the only one saying that intuition should lead the way in in designing your strategy and then implementing the action. Jeff Bezos would say he bought the Washington Post following his intuition. Steve Jobs says that it's the most important assets.
Yeah.
Samantha Wills closed her business following her own intuition. So it's not just me,
it's not
from a little town in the south of France, connecting here from Cronulla with her nice business. This is common sense. If you want to be a successful entrepreneur, you need to start tuning in and stop outsourcing your intuition.
Yes, I was talking about that with a girlfriend the other day. We were doing a debrief about some things in life, and they were the actual words that we didn't say stop outsourcing intuition. We said stop outsourcing a whole lot of things and start, validation, a whole lot of things, and insource that.
Yes.
Really cool there, because when I talk with people about intuition, they're often about, well, what is it and how do I know? And it's different there's a whole range of things, isn't it? And I love what you said there about finding their way of accessing their intuition, and it's about what's right for them. And it's not about what I need to do it a certain way because that's what Laetitia's doing. It's about what is it for me in who I am in this lifetime. And
definitely, and know that we are all intuitive.
Yes.
Yes, I'm a medium psychic. I come from a family of healer, all that. So I was born with intuition being our way of being. So I've always been trusting my intuition, even when I thought I was not, I was.
Yes.
But I think for some people who've never listened to it, it's just about reconnecting with that. We are all intuitive. So it's just like a muscle. Is when you go to the gym the first time, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm not flexible. You can work on that. So it's just about working on the thing, because intuition is really a gift. And I really want us to start reconnecting with it, which was our innate way of being.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Lighted, tell us about your book. So you were going to call it, what did you say? Knowing.
So initially we were going to call it Light Your Way. But then the beautiful Michelle Obama, I don't know if you know her.
Of course.
I'm not making that jokes. She released a book just a few months before I released mine, which is called The Light We Carry.
Yeah.
And, I was like, okay, light your way, the light we carry, it's a bit confusing and so on. So we started brainstorming with a publisher around a new name. And then we were talking about it and so on. But the thing is, like, the light framework is at the heart of my book.
Yes.
So I wanted light on the title, and we're like, it's important because we're all connecting with our inner light, which is how I define your intuition, and really reconnecting with that way of being a business owner through the light framework, which I describe in the book and all of that. So basically we're like, okay, we need light on the cover. And then light it came and was like this full intuitive response. Yes. You know it. I needed to test it, ask people and so on. But when it was lighted, I was like, this is it. Didn't need to ask anyone if it's great in English, if it's, I just don't care. So people are like, oh, you should say light it up. I'm like, no, it's lighted. That's it.
Yeah. I love that it came to you through a process of, originally what you were going to have is like, well, can't have that. We need to go back and revisit. But it was allowing space for that to come. When I'm working with my clients and I ask them a question, they often say, oh, I don't know. It's like, how do you feel, or what's going on? They go, I don't know. And then it's like, well, if you did know, what would the response be? And often then they go, yeah, I don't know. But they're really quick to say, I don't know.
Yes.
And then it's just like, well, let's just sit with that and let's see what comes forward. And then they'll say, oh, I don't know if this is a thing, but this is kind of what's happening for me at the moment. It's like, yeah, that's a thing. That is absolutely a thing. And then they'll go, oh, that reminds me of this other thing and this other thing. Oh, actually, that's, for me, that's about accessing intuition. We have those, the resources within us. It's about creating that space for us to allow them to come forward for us. I think sometimes we're in such a rush, like, give me the answer,
yes,
that we don't hear that it's there.
And that's where, in Ayurveda and in a lot of my teaching, I always say it starts with space.
Yeah, sorry.
Without space, nothing can happen. Yeah. Without space, a fire cannot be created. Without space, you cannot write anything. Without space, you cannot channel any ideas without space. So always making space. So that's where, doing the Marie Kondo is really powerful in our physical space, but in everything, making the space for... to sit with it, to find the answer, and, to write a book, to whatever is the thing, to record a podcast. Make the space first.
I had a really beautiful image, and it's really obvious, but it was really profound for me. It's like, when we say, what fills your cup? And it was just like the image of this cup that's full, but when it's full, there's no room for anything else to come in. So it's always looking at the cup and what can I release from it to be able to create space for more to come in. And it was just like, I say that a lot, but when that visual came in the other day, it's just like going, oh, yeah, of course. Yes, of course. I'm on a major physical declutter of stuff. And I must admit, it's a challenging process because there's attachment to stuff. And I'm working through that attachment or detachment, I guess. Yeah, it's an interesting process. I want to ask you, I reckon we need to come back for maybe a multi-part series because there's a lot of things I want to ask you. I'm just thinking through my thoughts. Let me ask you this first. What was the process of writing your book like? And I know that that's a very big question. What was that like? How did you go through that process?
I think the process is actually encompassed in the light framework itself.
Yeah, beautiful.
Because it's exactly, I followed the light framework without realizing I was following the light framework at the time because I was writing the book, if that makes sense. So it was coming together and I'm like, oh, it's the process I followed. So basically, writing a book was not on my agenda. So again, I told you I'm a visionary. I plan, in the next 5-10 years, not a book. And not in English, if a book would have come, And then I went actually on a new moon in Scorpio on a silent retreat by myself. So we're going to have a new moon in Scorpio on the 13th of November. So about 2 years ago, new moon in Scorpio, 2021, went on a solo retreat. I was grieving a friend of us who had passed away on the full moon in Scorpio, so 6 months before. So I was like, new beginning, rebirth, Scorpio energy, let me go on a solo retreat. Meditation, you need to write a book. No, it's coming back. Okay, so then what did I do? The first step of the light framework, I lean in. Okay, I'm going to write a book. So the first step was declaring I'm going to write a book, putting it on my vision, and really being like, okay, I'm going to become an author. Okay, I'm going to write a book. Okay, it's going to be about this process of reconnecting with your intuition, because the message was very loud and clear that I need to teach that to others, not limited just to my community and all of those kind of things. It's like, okay, I'm going to lean in. So that was the easiest part, because for me, designing the vision, leaning in, easy. I know for a lot of people, when they read my books, they're like, oh my gosh, it's the hardest part. Like designing the vision and, leaning in and embracing the vision is really hard. For me, that was the easy part. Then illuminating the path, which is the eye of the light framework, was like, okay, so what do I need to put in place? Working backwards from the vision of being an author, what are the steps? How do I get that done? Who do I need to surround myself with? Like, let's put that on a map. So I call that the illumination map, which I teach in the book. And I was actually doing that. Like, what are the steps backwards? Like, blah, blah, blah. So working backwards from the vision. And then gathering, which is a G of the framework, was great as well. It was gathering all the stories, what's in the book, starting writing, gathering my mentor, finding, the right people to surround me in my author journey, the publisher, all of those kind of things. So gathering all of this. And then the hardest part, which is the hardest part for everyone, and the hardest part in the book, was honoring the creative process, honoring the divine timing for ideas to drop, for this to happen, for that to be picked up by a publisher, for that to be done, for that. Like, the honoring was really hard. And then even now, transforming and becoming an author is an interesting step of the process, because I never introduced myself as an author first. And I need to start doing that, because I am an author, I am a speaker, and I am a business strategist, business doula, business mentor. But I need to lead and transform, then become this author. So that's the process I went through. How was it? There was amazing moments where you have, this creative genius, and like, I'm just spoiled with this book. And you have moments where like, oh my gosh, it's so shit. I need to redo that. Or when I received, for instance, the feedback on my first manuscript for my book mentor, where I had to rework my introduction, I was like, I'm not reworking it. Your ego kicking in. They're like, I'm not rewriting. So I took 2 months off writing. Had 2 months off writing just because I couldn't redo my introduction. I was not hearing, listening, receiving the feedback as a gift as I should have. And it took me 2 months. Again, the honoring, just stopping and being like, okay, I'm just going to let it be. And I'll come back writing. So I took 2 months off writing in the process. Then I enjoyed writing on a trip that I was in France. Then I had moments where the creative spark will, come when the girls are in their swimming lesson and you don't have your laptop, you don't have anything to write. So I would voice note myself, being like, so this is the idea. Right, but I can't right now. So voice noting myself, in the middle of the swimming lessons when the girls are in the pool and it's very noisy. And then you're listening, like, what were you saying? What is the idea? So it was a very, very interesting process. And I think the main mindset shift that I had to go through was, who am I to write a book in English when I'm a native French speaker? And for a long time, it was a mindset block. And now I realize it is a gift, because actually I don't compare myself with Shakespeare because I'm not English. So I can write a very simple, but not simplistic, very simple book because I have simple English.
Oh, I love that so much. And it's like you followed your own framework intuitively.
Yes.
But then, so people go and we've got details of where you can purchase the book in the show notes as well. So light it. Coming sort of to a bit of a close, but the authenticity piece, Laetitia, there's bits that I can hear through your journey where you were more authentic, like in alignment with who you are, and then there was pieces where you weren't in alignment. What are some tips about helping, and they're already woven through what you've been sharing, but what are some of your tips for others who are maybe not finding it as easy to step into that authenticity of who they truly are?
So, some things that really helped me in my journey of becoming myself, and, that is described in the book as well, but that's I shared in my journey. But some things that really helped me was making space, as we talked about, and really rediscovering why I am here.
Yeah.
And what do I want to be doing? What impact do I want to have? And there are different moments in my life when this question came to me. We talked about motherhood, we talked about with my Saturn return, but also, when I lost one of my grandpa was very close by, and then my grandma. It's just those moments where you're like connecting with yourself and making the space to ask those soul questions, which sometimes are a bit confronting, but just having this self-inquiry and this space to, and whether it's journaling, whether it's collage, whether it's talking to a friend, whether it's, a drawing or a photo, whatever it is, whatever is your way to express that, but going through this self-inquiry and being like, okay, why am I doing what I'm doing, and what do I want to do, and what is my legacy, and where do I want to lead myself, and what example do I want to leave to my community, my children, my friend, my nephew, my godchildren, things like that. Like just connecting within and making that space for self-inquiry. I think this was the gift that I had after my burnout, with the 2 weeks and the other 2 weeks off, the 6 months I had of soul searching and so on. And the second element around authenticity is don't rush the process.
Yeah.
It's like, you will go through the layer of the onion, or through, discovering who you are, and just embrace the journey at your own pace. I said vulnerably that it took me 7 years to start a business. And, it's like for some people, it would take them a lifetime to start a business, and they will be on the deathbed being like, oh my gosh, I wish I started a business. So it's like, just go with your own rhythm and peel the layer to find your true voice, your true self, and don't rush the process. Because we know that when we look at nature and everyone is talking to you about the flower, don't rush it to bloom, or so on and so forth. But how many times are we going in our garden and we're like, so is it jasmine season yet? I love my jasmine being full bloom right now. That's why I'm thinking about this. But every time I go in my garden, I'm like, when is jasmine season? I love it. The smell, the full bloom of the white jasmine and all of that. But I'm not rushing it. So why would I rush my own authentic voice to come out? So allowing the process to unfold as divinely timed as it should be. So that's the second tip. Yeah. Don't rush the process. Even though when I say that, you already hate me, but I don't care, because I need to remind myself, which is the honoring stage of the light framework.
Yeah.
Honor the time. And then the third thing for them to really find their authentic voice and their authentic self, which I will use for myself, is surround yourself with people who are ready to hold space for you to find that authentic self. So whether it's Catherine in your village, or whether it's other people in your village, to really help you through that process of self-discovery. I have so many people around me that surround me, that hold me as I discover part of myself, as I navigate through, being a mother and now approaching perimenopause, like just going through those stages of life and strengthening my craft. And, I have so many guides around me, and I'm guiding others, holding space for them. So important to be mindful that you have people around you that are ready for you to peel the layer and hold you and create a safe environment for you to do that.
So beautiful and profound. And the self-discovery, it is a layered, when you say about peeling the layers of the onion, in my experience, I get to one layer and that exposes things that I just wasn't even aware of.
Yeah.
That then under each of those layers is something new. And sometimes the things that were there before are buried deeper, another layer of them. And you also said very earlier in our chat about, when I commented on your energy, that the light and the shadow, that it's not just discovering the light within, it's actually exploring the shadow, which is the flip side of it, and how's that playing out in life, and what's working, what's not working, what do you want. And for me, it's a journey. It's not a sit down, half an hour, 2 hours, tick, done. I've discovered it's an evolution, and allowing yourself that space. And I really loved what you said too about surround yourself with people that support you because I know a lot of women in my world don't have that. They have people who are very judgmental of them changing, and that's coming from a fear base, that it's, they're not wanting their others to change, and they're not supporting, and it can be very stifling. So if you do experience that, it's about finding other people that do support you on that journey.
Yeah.
And, whether it's about people supporting you and holding space, but also people like yourself, myself, and other people out there that can help to navigate through that journey as well. I think some of it you can do on your own, absolutely. Some of it is about having a guide and having somebody who's got your back, holding your hand and leading you through a process so you can do that self-discovery.
Definitely.
Oh my gosh, there's a lot more I want to ask you, but I'm not going to. We'll do another part 2. I'm really interested in the Ayurveda. How do you pronounce it? Ayurveda. Really interested in astrology, really interested in lots and lots and lots of other things.
The layers.
the layers. Laetitia, that was just beautiful. So where can our audience find you?
Yes. So as you're already on a podcast platform, you can search for the Essential Shift podcast. If you're not bored by my French accent by now, you can listen to my own podcast.
So cool. It's such a beautiful accent. Yeah.
So it's called the Essential Shift podcast, and I have conversation with clients and by myself, also solo episode around weaving strategy and intuition together and the power of it. And then I love to hang out on Instagram at essential.shift. I am the one answering my direct messages. I outsource a few things in my business, but this is me because it's a social platform. So if you always send me a message on Instagram, I'm always the one responding. I love AI, love bots, but it's not a bot there and it's not outsourced. So I am the one replying. So you can send me a DM on Instagram at essential.shift. And if you're someone who loves listening, you can get your audiobook of Light It on any platform, from Spotify, Audible, any places, Barnes and Nobles. You can get your audiobook of Light It. I will just be reading the introduction when you listen to it. It is someone else that I hired to read the rest. But the feedback that I've received from the audiobook is it's beautifully done. I hired a professional voice because I know my accent can be tricky sometimes. So that's the invitation for you.
And you've been doing your, because the book's new, isn't it? The book is,
It's since the 21st of September, it's out for the equinox. So
that is so
it's been
cool.
a month and something.
Yeah, that's very exciting. So all the details will be in the show notes anyway. So if people want to follow you, 100% do that. I loved this chat so much. Thank you for your time. And also, if people haven't already signed up to the Happiness Hive newsletter, pop over to my website and just scroll to the bottom. I have a weekly just fabulous tips about living a beautiful life and other little bits and pieces there, just some juicy goodness. So Laetitia, hugs and happiness. Thank you so much.
Thank you.